And Rob was forthcoming about that with authorities when they talked to him. He did note that while they were on the phone, someone knocked on Jennifer's door, but she didn't answer it, and she thought it might be an upstairs neighbor or something. But I don't think that was ever confirmed. That was the last time Jennifer and Rob would ever speak.
Welcome to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends, the podcast where we explore life, career, relationships, and pop culture through a Christian conservative perspective. Each episode, we dive into deep topics that matter most to us women, from navigating your career with grace and confidence to watering meaningful relationships grounded in faith. We're here to empower you to embrace your femininity and stand firm in your beliefs. We'll also tackle the latest in pop culture, discussing how they align or clash with our values. Let's uncover the truth and encourage each other to live boldly and authentically. So whether you're at home or on your commute, get ready for some fabulous conversations. Grab your teacup, pour yourself some tea. Come on, girlies, we're changing culture. The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not reflect our employers. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory.
And I'm Abby.
And we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values. Hello, you guys. Welcome to this latest episode. We are doing another true crime missing case. I'm sure you see the title already, but we're going to be talking about Jennifer Kessie, which is a case that I remember hearing about middle school, maybe not middle school. Yeah, I guess middle school because she disappeared. Yeah, I was in middle school in 2006. I was actually in the 6th grade in 2006. So I guess I remember hearing about it and watching like 2020 on it with my grandma. So this is a case that I think a lot of people have heard of, and we were kind of talking a little bit offline. There's not a lot of information about it, but I do think it's something worth to discuss, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to discuss it. So anyway, without further ado, Abby, what is our law fact for the day?
So my law fact is actually going to be kind of in the middle of my story today. So okay. I think I'm just going to dive right in, if that's okay.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, cool. So this is the story of Jennifer Kessie. She was born on May 20th, 1981. So today is her birthday.
Whoa.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, well.
She would be 44 today. Am I doing math right? Math's hard.
That's not my profession. Wow. Well, wherever you are, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was the first child in their family until her parents had her younger brother, Logan. She and her brother were very close. By all accounts that I've read, they were like good friends. Yeah. They shared friends. They would go out together. He would come visit her at college. Her parents were described as very strict. They were very safety conscious because they had actually been held at gunpoint in their own home at one point. So they were very conscious of what to do to keep yourself safe in a dangerous situation, and their family actually had a lot of conversations about it. And as such, Jennifer and Logan themselves were both also very safety conscious, which makes it even crazier that something terrible happened to her.
Yeah, for sure.
For a little more background, Jennifer graduated from a high school in Tampa, Florida, and then she later graduated from University of Central Florida in Orlando. After she graduated college, she stayed in Orlando and worked in a finance job there. She was very, very intelligent. She graduated with honors from both high school and college, and she was excelling at work and was promoted 3 times within her first year there. So she was a very, very successful 24-year-old girl living in a big city by herself. Let's see. In 2005, she met her boyfriend, Rob Allen. He lived in Fort Lauderdale, but he was in town visiting with his roommate, and they met at a bar. And they immediately got into a relationship. They would visit each other, talk on the phone. It seemed like they had a really good relationship, other than having to be long distance.
Really quick about him, I watched a documentary that came out last year, and he was still talking fondly about her. I mean, he's gotten married and moved on, but I think it just speaks volumes that he was still talking fondly about her all these years later.
Yeah, I'm sure this whole situation had a real impact on him.
Yeah.
So she was just essentially excelling in life at this point. She was 24, doing great at work, getting promoted in a new relationship, and she bought her own condo at a complex called Mosaic at Millennia. She moved in on Thanksgiving Day 2005, which is exactly 2 months before she went missing. So she had not been living there very long at the time that she went missing. The condo was located right across from a mall, and it was very new. It had only been built 3 years before, and it originally started as an apartment complex that they were converting into condos, and she was actually the very first person to close on a condo in that complex.
And she was just 24, which is exciting that you get your own condo at 24 years old to be living and successful like that, which is also so sad.
Yeah, she really was just getting started in life, and she was by all accounts doing extremely well in pretty much every aspect of her life from what it sounded like. She did note that the apartment complex was undergoing a lot of renovations at the time that she moved in, and she would often see like big groups of construction workers, painters, maintenance people around the complex. And she had told her parents and her brother that they kind of made her uncomfortable because they would like stare at her when she walked by and stuff, which was pretty weird. But she said that they never like catcalled her or anything, so she never reported it to anyone, but she did mention it to family members that there were these groups of men that would kind of hang around the apartment and be a little weird. But it was nothing really to write home about. And again, she was just very, very safety conscious. Just something to keep in mind for later, perhaps. So this all kind of started on January 8th, 2006. It was a Wednesday. Jennifer made the 3-hour drive to her boyfriend Rob's house in Fort Lauderdale, and they flew to St. Croix the next day for a weekend vacation with a group of friends. While she was gone, her brother Logan and his friend Travis stayed at her condo. Jennifer and Rob flew back on Saturday, January 20. Sorry, they were supposed to fly back on Saturday, January 21st, but their flight got canceled, so they wound up flying back the next day instead. And instead of driving the 3 hours back to Orlando, she just stayed the night at Rob's and then drove 3 hours to work that Monday morning. So she left at 6 a.m., got to work at 9 a.m. It was, by all accounts, a typical work day. She did her regular day, had a meeting that ended at 6 p.m. and then went home. After she got home, she made a bunch of phone calls. She called her parents, she called her brother to tell them about her trip. They all reported that she seemed fine, happy, in normal spirits. She called a friend to talk about the trip, and then finally she called Rob at 9:57 p.m. from her landline. She and Rob got in kind of a bit of a fight that night. I think the long distance was kind of just weighing on them, and it was getting really difficult, and they kind of got into an argument. So it wasn't anything really out of the ordinary, but that did happen. And Rob was forthcoming about that with authorities when they talked to him. He did note that while they were on the phone, someone knocked on Jennifer's door, but she didn't answer it, and she thought it might be an upstairs neighbor or something. But I don't think that was ever confirmed. That was the last time Jennifer and Rob would ever speak. So then the next morning was Tuesday, January 24th, and Rob and Jennifer would talk every morning on the phone before work, but he didn't get a call from her that morning. And he did think it was weird because he was running late, and so he gave her a call and she didn't pick up. He tried again after he got out of his meeting at 9 a.m., and again, she didn't pick up. After that, he called her work directly around 10:30 a.m., and they said that she hadn't arrived yet. I guess it seemed kind of like her work schedule was flexible and she wouldn't always get there at the same time. So I don't think anybody was really super concerned at this point, but people started to get concerned when she missed a meeting because that was very unusual for her. And CFO at her office was actually friends with her dad, and he just called her dad right away and was like, she's not here. This is really weird. Like, do you want to maybe look into this? And everything kind of really snowballed from there. Like, people got really worried right away. It was instantly concerning. Her parents and her brother started calling her. She wasn't picking up. And eventually her phone just started going straight to voicemail, which was really concerning. And her family, like, really reacted pretty immediately. They all got the car and drove to Orlando to her apartment complex to figure out what was going on.
And I listened to a podcast where he said that, like, this was the first time she has ever not answered the phone, which is going to lead into my lesson at the end. But she seemed to be someone who was very, answered the phone, was attentive, was on top of things.
And it was in my notes somewhere, but the podcast that I listened to noted that her parents were still paying for her cell phone, and their rule basically was, when we call you, answer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think, yeah, like, and obviously she probably didn't want her parents to stop paying for her phone or take her phone away or something.
Right,
So
right.
it seemed like she was very responsive. It seemed like she was on the phone a lot too, talking to friends. I mean, it was 2006. I don't think texting was as big back then, so
Yeah.
probably a lot of phone calls mostly. But yeah, it was like basically her parents were like, she's breaking a big rule and she never does this. So it was sort of reasonable for them to be concerned, I think.
Right.
So when they were on their way to Orlando, Logan, her brother, called the apartment complex and asked that an employee enter the unit to make sure that she was okay, or just to kind of see what was going on, do sort of like a welfare check. And they said, yes, we can do that, but we have to have two people go in at the same time. It was company policy or something. So it took about like 5 to 10 minutes to track someone down, and they went in the apartment complex and they didn't see anything immediately alarming. Like everything looked pretty normal, but she wasn't there. The door was locked when they went in. So, I mean, by all accounts, it seemed like she had a normal morning and then left, locked the door behind her, and then after
Yeah.
that, something happened.
Yeah, whatever happened to her was after she left.
Right. So there, like, nobody really suspected that she like got kidnapped from her complex, like from her
Right.
unit or anything.
Right.
They asked to check if her car was there, and they confirmed that it was not. They started calling hospitals, prisons, like just anywhere that she might be, that she wouldn't be able to make it to work. Nobody had heard from her. They called the Orlando Police Department to report her missing, and they did not take it seriously at first, which is pretty common in these cases because, I mean, I get it to a certain extent, I guess, because
Right.
if you're an adult, like, you're free to go places and do what you want,
Yeah.
and that doesn't necessarily mean you're missing. But
Right.
at the same time, she's doing all of these things that are unusual and out of character, like missing work meetings and not answering her phone. So,
Exactly. And as an adult, you have the right to even go missing. If you just one day decide you want to be a missing person, you have every right to do that. I think that, like, just aside, whenever these situations happen, the police should consider, like, if someone can show you this is outside of someone's routine, I think that's where the problem lies. And that, once again, is back to my lesson, because it goes with another routine thing. But, like, I think that is what they need to rely on, because I do understand where they come from. Like, I mean, there's been times, like, I did not answer my phone. I'll never forget. One time, really quick, I was in college, and I was out with some friends, and I got separated from them, so I called them. But you know how on your phone in your recents, there will be other numbers there. So I accidentally called my mom. So I called her at like 3 a.m., and it was a mistake. And I didn't realize I called her. Or I think I realized I called her, but hung up right away. Well, my mom wakes up at like 7 the next day, and I'm still asleep because I was out late. And I wake up to I mean, she's blown up my phone. She thought something had happened to me because, I called her at 3 a.m. and it was a mistake. But anyway, my point is, like, these things happen. Literally, it was great timing because the last text she sent me was, okay, I'm about to call your school's police, something like that, to figure out where you are. So, like, if she had called and they had checked on me and I'm like, sleeping in my dorm, hey, sorry about that. But that's not always the case.
Yeah, she just wasn't to be heard from by anyone. I need to tell a story too, since your story made me think of a story. But when I was in college, when we used to play beer pong, like, you know how when you hit the cup, you move the cup right to the side?
Yes.
If you accidentally get the ball in the side cup, one of our rules was that you had to call your mom.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
Like, my mom was cool, and she,
Oh my God. No.
never, like, there were some people who were like, oh my God, no, I can't call my mom. But I was always like, yeah, I'll call my mom.
No.
And so, yeah, she kind of eventually got used to it. And, like, she would get calls from me at, like, 10, 11 at night. And the next morning, she would just text me and be like, beer pong? So, That's my funny story. My mom eventually became desensitized to my late night phone calls because she just knew that it wasn't anything serious, which is maybe not a good thing in hindsight.
And that kind of goes to what my lesson will be, which everybody, hold on. But yeah, my lesson's going to be kind of attached to that.
Okay. All right. Well, yep, we'll get there. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, so the Orlando PD showed up at her apartment complex. When they looked around, like, again, by all accounts, everything looked normal. Like, her bed appeared to have been slept in, her shower was wet, there was a wet towel, like, there was even like a curling iron and makeup on the counter. Like everything was normal. Like she just got out of bed, got ready, went to work. But they already knew that she never arrived at work. So that was kind of like the concerning factor. But yeah, the family wasted no time. They basically like were all out there. They had a group of like 11 people there who were making signs, holding out flyers, like literally by the afternoon of the same day. Even when the police department wasn't taking it that seriously, they just kind of took it into their own hands. And then the police like got upset with them because they were sort of centered at the apartment complex unit and they were like, you're destroying a possible crime scene. So that's annoying.
Yeah.
Let's see. They're really, yeah, I mean, for better or worse, the apartment complex was kind of contaminated just because there were so many people going in and out and like sort of running this system of trying to find her. There was no DNA evidence. The complex also didn't have any security cameras, which I thought was interesting. I guess it was 2006 and maybe they weren't as like widely accessible back then, but
Yeah.
a large apartment complex in a big city to not have any security cameras, I thought was bizarre.
And I want to make a comment really quick about the people going back and forth. It's fresh. Like, I think that's something that's always frustrating and difficult because no one's going to care and search and love. No one, everybody listening, there's not a single soul who's going to search for you as hard as your mom and your dad and your family and your friends. The police are going to do their job, but, they're trying to find 50 million other people. Your parents, your siblings, no one is going to care as much. No one's going to put as much effort as them. So there's that aspect where it's like, okay, you have to go in and do everything. But at the same time, like, you don't have the same resources as the police. Everyday citizens cannot go and get DNA, especially if you don't have a lot of money. I mean, I want to say there are companies now where you can send DNA and they can run the whole thing for you. But the average everyday citizen cannot do that. So it's it's so difficult trying to figure out where the balance lies in this type of thing. Because you want to move quickly, you want to do everything you can, but at the same time, you do need the police and their resources.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, they continued their investigation, and nobody at the complex reported seeing or hearing a struggle of any kind that morning. Let's see. Jennifer made the news like almost immediately. Her face was everywhere on the news, billboards, these signs, flyers that were getting handed out. Everyone knew this girl that was missing.
And she's so beautiful. That's just like a side note. She's so beautiful. All the pictures.
She's very, very pretty.
Yeah.
The media coverage really brought in a lot of leads, as it often does in these cases. And by the morning of Thursday, January 26th, they found her car. It was parked at a different apartment complex about a mile away from where she was living. Once police got this lead, they, within minutes, arrived at this apartment complex. They were able to confirm that it was Jennifer's car. They didn't search the car right away. They waited for her boyfriend, Rob, to show up so he could search the car with them. It's not really clear why they did that, but Jennifer's dad believes that police wanted him to be the person who opened the trunk in case Jennifer's body was found inside of it, just to see what his reaction would be. That was never confirmed, but I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. Could be.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I've heard that as well.
Yeah. They didn't really find anything in the car. There were no signs of a struggle or that anything was stolen. There was even a DVD player just sitting right there in the back seat in plain view. all they really found was a large boot print right next to the gas pedal that clearly did not belong to Jennifer. So it was clear that somebody else had driven her car at some point. They brought in dogs, didn't find anything. This wasn't really an area that Jennifer was known to frequent, and apparently it was an area where cars were often stolen. So it could have been just a stolen car, but it's just bizarre that she's also missing at this point.
I was just about to say that what's also crazy is that could have absolutely nothing to do with what happened to her. It could just be like a weird, crazy coincidence.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't know. So
yeah.
They interviewed residents at the complex. Nobody could really definitively say how long the car had been there. This apartment complex, though, did have security cameras, which the investigators pulled. They were able to see the car entering the visitor parking lot where it was found at 11:59 a.m. on the day that she went missing. The person pulled into the spot and then waited there for 32 seconds. After that, the person then exits the car and walks past an iron rod fence. And how the security footage worked, it wasn't like a video stream. It wasn't like a constant video. It took snapshots every 2 to 3 seconds. And it just happened that this person was walking by the iron rods on the fence right when their face was covered by the fence posts.
I will post the picture so you guys can see it. If you've never heard of this case, when you see the picture, it is absolutely insane. The quote unquote luck that this person had. It is so, I mean, it could not have worked out any more perfect for them.
Mm-hmm. Like, this should have busted the case wide open, and
100%.
It just by happenstance blocked the person's face to the point where they couldn't see who it was.
Yeah.
So they did have some information from these photos that were taken by the security camera. It was determined that this was most likely a male between about 5'3" and 5'5". They conjectured that this male had larger than average feet due to the large boot print in the car. He was probably
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
1 second. I just thought of, okay, so I'm 5'3.5".
Mm-hmm.
That is a short guy.
Yeah.
And he had large feet?
I know, I thought that was interesting too. I almost wondered if maybe he was purposely wearing larger shoes to
yeah,
or I don't know, because that is odd that a short guy would have big feet. But
yeah,
I mean, it's possible. So.
I mean, anything's possible.
Right.
This guy is he had lottery, he has weird luck going on in his life in the first place. So, but that is peculiar because I'm. That's interesting. Okay, keep going. I didn't know about the large feet part.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was interesting too. They could tell that he was wearing either boots or high top sneakers. From the photos, it appeared that he was wearing work attire and he possibly looked like maybe he was a painter and he had longer hair. That was pretty much all they had, though, was that kind of vague description. They did look into her boyfriend, Rob, but his story about being home that night before and then going to work the next morning and living in a completely different city that was 3 hours away from Orlando, checked out, and he was cleared pretty much immediately. They didn't really ever think that he was a person of interest in this. They looked into one of her ex-boyfriends who was at a bar near her condo that same night before she went missing, but he was never named a person of interest either. They did look into the workers at the condo complex that I had described earlier, how she said that there were a lot of people that were kind of in and out of the apartment complex doing maintenance, construction, painting, that kind of stuff. But it was kind of difficult to track people because some of them worked for the complex, some of them were contractors, and some of them were just kind of unofficially paid under the table. So they didn't even really have a good record of who was coming and going. And, some of them would do a job and then, not be asked back to do another job. So there were constantly people coming and going. So there were a lot of different men that they could look at for this kind of stuff, and probably some that they didn't even know about because there was no record of it.
Right.
It also appeared that the apartment complex didn't really keep good records of who was going where, who was doing what job. They didn't really have a formal process for requesting maintenance on your unit. You would kind of just let someone from management know that there was a problem, they would send someone in, and that was that. But they didn't have like an online request. Like my apartment complex I have like an app that if, something breaks down, I can just put in a request in the app and they have, a record of it. But that's not how this one worked. Like they would just tell maintenance and they would send someone in. And there were apparently people coming and going from units all the time. So it's just kind of a mess a little bit.
Yeah.
Of, like trying to track down these people. Let's see. Where did I leave off here? The Orlando Police Department released the video footage of the iron rod fence of the photos that were taken. That was released to the public in May of 2000. It was the family and a lot of people from the public really criticized the police department for waiting so long to release that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of conflicted on that because I know stuff like that can impact investigations, but at the same time, if you have no leads, I feel like it might be in the best interest of the investigation to release something like that.
Right. Especially because, like, there were so it was like a year later that they released it. I mean, it could have been, I understand maybe waiting like 4 or 5 months, but like a year, that's a little long to wait.
Right. Yeah. Their reasoning for not releasing it right away is they didn't want to scare away whoever the person was. Which I thought, okay, not a great explanation, but
I mean,
kind of messed up a lot of stuff for this investigation. So.
Yeah. And even thinking about, like, let's say that, so releasing it is good, but, like, realistically, like, there's no way to tell who that is. So it couldn't really scare anyone. And then even if you're like, my cousin is 5'3", there's no way you can look and be like, that was definitely my cousin. Yeah. So I think it's better to err on the side of caution of releasing it because maybe you know someone that was in that area and like they wear that. I don't know. Support's used to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, the police department sifted through thousands of leads. They did a pretty thorough investigation. They had 4 different teams of detectives independently review the case. They did polygraphs on different suspects and different witnesses, and they just really didn't have much to go on, even after all of these resources were expended to try to find Jennifer. Her family even at one point offered a $250,000 reward, and then her employer actually offered a $1 million reward. And the expiration date came and went, and nobody had anything. So now we'll arrive at my law fact for this episode. In 2008, Senate Bill 502 was passed in Florida. It's also entitled the Jennifer Kessie and Tiffany Sessions Act. Just as a little side note, Tiffany Sessions was a 20-year-old college student who went missing after she went out for a jog in 1989. This also took place in Florida, and her case is also unsolved. This new law basically required that anyone under the age of 25 would be considered a missing person within 2 hours of the report being filed. It also required that police had to ask relatives of anyone missing for longer than 90 days to submit a DNA sample to put in a national database. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's really short to me. So.
Yeah, 2 hours. Like, I just keep thinking, like, once again, it's tough because I think about, like, my mom.
Yeah.
Like, my mom could call, I don't answer, and she deems it, and I'm okay. But then there are people who, like, that could have saved their life.
Totally.
So it's just like I don't know. 2 hours
like
doesn't really short
until you know. Like I could be taking a really sound nap for 2 hours.
Right. My battery could be dead for 2 hours. I mean, a lot of things could happen in 2 hours. So it's you don't know until you know, like you said.
Like the ones, they can declare them missing and then, they pop up and it's like, okay, well, they're not missing anymore. But
right.
I think it's just to encourage them to act a little faster because I think that if they might have done that in this case, things could have been different. So.
My thing is, like, we'll talk about it toward the end when we get to, like, theories and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to kind of get into that now. Like, that's kind of the investigation. I mean, there's more stuff that comes up later on, but so the same year that the Jennifer Kessie and Tiffany Sessions Act was passed, a man named David Byron Russ said that he had a written confession from Jennifer's killer, like, in his possession. He was in prison for murder, and he basically was claiming that, like, another prisoner had, like, given him some written confession, like, that he was the one that killed Jennifer. The police department looked into it, and he even said, like, I want to meet with her dad, and her dad went to the prison to meet with him, like, because he was like,
That's right.
might have something, but
Yeah.
nothing, it never really went anywhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are like, well, like, what does this guy have to lose? Why would he make something like this up? But, you know, people get bored in prison. And
I was gonna say people do that a lot, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically didn't go anywhere. In 2009, they assigned a new detective to take a fresh look at the case. And this detective interviewed a housekeeper at the condo complex. He showed this housekeeper the video, and she was like, I know who that is. She was basically certain that it was a maintenance worker at the complex named Chino. They received the tip about Chino, and it was confirmed that somebody had reported this guy earlier, but I don't think they were ever able to confirm or deny whether somebody actually followed up on it at the time that the tip was received. So they went out to talk to this guy at this time, so in 2009. At the time, he was in prison for statutory rape. He did admit to being in Jennifer's unit about a week before she went missing. She let them in. They were doing a paint job, and he was with another guy. It was him, another guy. She let them in. She was, like, getting ready for work, and she just said, like, she left while they were there, and she said, just lock up when you leave, basically.
And when they first went in, I do remember this, when they first went in, she was on the phone with someone so
Right.
that they knew. So that was one of the things that she would do when people would come into the apartment. She would be on the phone so that they knew that there was someone on the phone with her.
Yes. She was very safety conscious. She would
Yeah.
always talk on the phone when there were people in her apartment. He denied being the one in the video. It's noted that he's 5'9", so he's taller than the suspect that they think, you know, they're looking for. He also passed a polygraph test, and police have said that he was extremely cooperative. So I don't know that they necessarily cleared him, but they didn't go any further with investigating him as a suspect. So in 2016, the state of Florida legally declared Jennifer Kessie deceased, like we talked about in our last episode. Her father attended that hearing alone. So, you know, just kind of a sad deal.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have really any answers at this point. And her family was very, very involved from the get-go, basically. I mean, They got in their car, drove down to Orlando immediately. It was noted, too, that her brother was set to move out to California, like, a week after she disappeared, and he just, like, canceled his move to stay with his family and keep looking for her. So her family was very, very involved, and to this day still is very involved looking for her. And
the dad said the dad, in another interview I saw, he said it's his full-time job trying to find her, which is so sad.
I know.
So sad.
I can't imagine living a life like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to say really quick.
No, go ahead.
When you hear things like that, it's like you just want whoever did it, just give them closure. Like, I just give these people closure. Let them have peace. So sad.
It's unfair to the families to have to sit and wonder what happened.
Yeah.
On the 12-year anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance, the police department announced some new efforts. They were assigning a new lead investigator and other law enforcement members. There was a new $15,000 reward, and they gave, like, a press conference about all of this stuff. At this press conference, Jennifer's father spoke. He sort of gave this, like, heart-wrenching account of how Jennifer has experienced both the American dream and the American nightmare, and he said, like, our family is on the nightmare side of this right now. Basically just sort of says, like, we've spent the last 12 years of our life dedicated to trying to find her. He begged the public for cooperation, asked people who had previously called in tips to call them in again if they don't think they were ever followed up on to the extent that they should have been. And he sort of, like, nicely, diplomatically criticized the police department and like begged them to just like really pour their resources into this and do everything that they need to and follow up on every single tip, because I don't think her family ever thought that they actually were following up on everything. And I think that from the get-go they were a little bit annoyed at how this investigation went, because they kind of got a slow start on it and didn't take them all that seriously at first. um and he went on to then list every single person from the state of Florida that was at that time missing and asked for help for all of them. It was really a powerful statement.
Yeah.
So that led up to, on December 10th, 2018, the Kesse family filed a lawsuit against the Orlando Police Department. They basically asked to close the case and hand over all of the records to the family because they just kind of wanted to take over the investigation at that point.
Yeah.
It had been, over 12 years since she'd gone missing, and they didn't really have any answers or even any solid leads.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you guys have done what you can do. Let us take over. They asked for 6 more months to try to crack the case. And by March 2019, the lawsuit settled out of court. The family was able to get the records. They had to pay an administrative fee of over $18,000, which I thought was crazy.
Insane. That is injustice.
Yeah, an administration fee of $18,000.
That's for their own child's information. That is, right. I mean,
records that belong to their child.
Something like that's, add that to the list of things that we need to change. That's crazy.
I know. Basically how it worked then was that the Orlando Police Department was not working the case anymore, and it was completely taken over by the Kesse family. And it was the police department was sort of okay, yeah, we're happy to get rid of this case, They were here you go, family. It didn't even really seem like they cared, which I was this is so angering, especially probably for the family. But, that's all they wanted. They wanted to take over the investigation. They hired a private investigator, basically, to review all of the documents and follow up on things, and they were pretty horrified at what they found in all of these documents. There were tons and tons of leads that were just never followed up on, really, that probably should have been. There were several gaps in reporting, including one of 7 years. There were a lot of crucial leads early on in the case that just weren't followed up on. There was one very early on in the case was a woman who was 100% certain that she saw Jennifer's car at the apartment complex the day that she went missing. This witness has spoken to news outlets, but she's always remained anonymous. She said that between 7 and 7:30 a.m., she was driving her husband to his first radiation appointment. She stopped at a stop sign and saw a black Chevy Malibu at the exit of Jennifer's apartment complex, and the car was driving erratically. It looked like someone was trying to take control of the steering wheel, and she kind of freaked out about it. It was oh my gosh, something's not right there. But she was nervous because her husband was starting radiation that day and she didn't want to miss the appointment, and so she just kept going.
Yeah.
She couldn't see which way the car went or provide a description of anyone in the car, but she saw the car on the news the next day, and that was when she called in the tip, and it was never followed up on. This wasn't until years later that anybody even looked into this at all. And this was particularly striking to Jennifer's dad because, like I said, they were a very safety conscious family. They had a lot of conversations about how to keep yourself safe, and he said that he had told Jennifer, if you're ever in a situation where you're stuck in a car and you feel like you're in danger, do whatever you can to get out of the car and draw attention to yourself. And he told her that includes crashing the car if you need to. So he thinks that might have been what she was trying to do when that woman saw. On November 8th, 2019, the private investigator got another interesting lead. There was a woman that called him, and she told this private investigator that around the time Jennifer went missing, she was staying with a friend about 20 minutes away from Jennifer's condo, and they were staying at a lake house. And while they were at the lake house, she saw a man in a pickup truck pull up to the lake, and he got out of the car, looked around, apparently didn't see anything, and pulled a carpet out of the back of the pickup truck and just tossed it in the lake and watched it sink. And she was kind of like, okay. I mean, it wasn't clear to me whether at the time she like called 911 and was like, hey, I just saw this weird dude throw a carpet in the lake. But
And it's one of those things where it's like, do you report, like, is this person just being really weird? Or
yeah,
is this like something serious? That's tough to like decide.
I don't know what I would do if I saw something like
I don't
that.
know either. I remember one time we saw, me and my ex-boyfriend were leaving Walmart or something, and we saw someone like come out with like it looked like a kill kit type of thing. They had so much bleach, they had trash. It was literally like in a movie, and we looked at each other like, that's kind of weird, and never felt. And it could. I mean, there's a million. Actually, I don't know the reasons why you would need that much bleach, but it could have been absolutely nothing. They could be working for a big company and they need to bleach the whole building or something. But like in those moments, you notice it and it's like, that's weird. But you don't know. You don't say anything. Like it was so weird. And he had like, what if he even had like some sort of weapon? I remember the bleach in the trash bag specifically. But he had something that was really sketch. And he was like looking kind of weird. But it's like,
Right.
was it something? Was it not something? You never
like,
know.
It's not illegal to buy bleach in trash bags.
Right.
But in hindsight, if this guy was doing something shady and there were all these other factors involved, then you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I say anything?
Right. It's not illegal to throw a carpet in the. Well, actually, it could be illegal to do that. But the point is, on the carpet.
Some stuff.
Yeah. The point is, though, you can throw a carpet into the lake because you're just weird and you don't want to throw it away, or like, yeah, it doesn't mean you're a killer, but it's also like, who knows?
Yeah. So the private investigator brought in cadaver dogs, dive teams. They never found anything.
Mm.
And then, yeah, there was a lot of stuff with the apartment complex that they followed up on too, like the workers, but they, like, this is kind of when they discovered, oh my gosh, this apartment complex was a total mess. The security gate was not attended at all times. There was a log of who was coming and going, but it was very clearly not complete. And then, like I had said, there was no way to submit a formal work order or anything. They just kind of did it by word of mouth. There were also, they found out that there were some of the workers were like living in empty units kind of under the table. It was not clear to me whether they like were squatting there or like had permission to be there because they were doing work for the apartment complex or what the deal with that was.
Yeah.
But they got reports from some of the women that were living at the apartment complex around the time that Jennifer was living there that they had some weird interactions with some of the workers that were living / squatting there. There was one woman specifically had interactions with that Chino that they were talking about earlier. And like basically she kind of like thought he was weird and he was their neighbor and he would like show up at their apartment and like ask her to borrow stuff and then like kind of just started showing up to check in on her and she was kind of like he was like I was a little creeped out by him but he never really like did anything wrong. But then she and her roommates like were out late one night or something and there was someone like taking pictures of them with a professional camera and they were like, what is this? And they like never really knew that he had anything to do with it but sort of suspected because he was always walking around late at night, they said, and it was just weird. And again, like that could be nothing, he could just be like kind of a weird dude, who knows?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make him a killer but it is could be significant,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just kind of where things are left off today. Is I think a lot of people believe that a worker at the complex either did something or knows something, and that's kind of it. I mean, other than that, there's no real like other theories of what might have happened. They just really don't have a lot to go off of.
Yeah. And to add to it, I definitely think a worker did something or knows something as well. Is insane how many people were there that they just were not keeping track of.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff, I'll say this too, in 2025, that stuff does not fly.
Yeah.
People really are on top of it. But, you know, in 2006, I feel like we still were not as cautious. I mean, there wasn't even security cameras weren't as cautious as they were then. But it's definitely, I agree. I think it's a worker knows something. And I think it was probably a worker, one of the, I'll just say transient workers. They said there were the three types of workers, the workers that were with the apartment, contractors, and then people who would do cheap labor, essentially, and were paid under the table. I think it was probably one of the cheap laborers. It could have been a contract, I don't know, but I definitely think it was a worker. I think the thing that's just, I mean, what is just so crazy is just how zilch. There is absolutely nothing. And then I'm thinking again about the 5355 long hair. It's hard to believe that a woman would do this, A, to another woman, or that a woman would have the strength and blah, 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 you know. You guys know what I'm trying to say. But, like, that also kind of gives way to a woman to me, but, and, like, the feet might not be that big, but, like, for a woman, because a 5'3" woman and a 5'3" man, the 5'3" woman is still going to have smaller feet than the 5'3" man. But if you're already thinking it's a man, then maybe, I don't know though, but like if they're saying it's a man and they're looking for a man, then like it probably is a man. But 5'3", 5'5", that just really kind of screams woman to me. But then once again, logically, but you know, women's rights and women's wrongs, women can do anything a man can do. So like, it's possible. I don't know.
Yeah. This case is very frustrating.
It is very frustrating, and my heart really is
more frustrated by this than I am by Jody, who's in Truth.
Me too. Because at least with Jody,
was also frustrating, but I feel like they even have less on this one.
100%. And those two get compared a lot because, you know, they're two young, blonde, peppy women that were probably attacked in the morning. Oh, also, another thing I wanted to point out, how bold the person is to drive her car in the middle of the day. That's also crazy, too, because a lot of crimes usually happen at night. You have the cover of nightfall, people aren't paying as much attention. But literally the middle of the day, anyone can see you. Anyone could be out. So that's also crazy, too. Yeah, this one has even less because we don't even know where anything happened. Like, at least with Jody, we know it happened at her car. With Jennifer, I mean, it could have literally happened at her door, from between her doorstep to, I guess, where her car was parked. Something happened between there. But we're not even sure.
Yeah, very unsatisfying ending.
Yeah, for sure. So I just really pray that her family gets some closure. That's like all of these, and you know, whenever I think of these missing people, and we'll do more throughout the years, guys, but like whenever I think of the missing cases that we do, I'm just like, the family could just get closure. Because that's like the saddest part, or like when someone passes away, they just don't know. I mean, I guess when they get to heaven, or let's just say heaven, they'll figure it out then, but like it's just always just so sad. But yeah, so let me say my lesson. So my lesson is essentially, I think something that I'm going to work on and I think about sometimes is having routine or being reliable and consistent. If I don't answer a text from a friend for 2 or 3 days, it's not that big of a deal. You know, that's something I need to work on. Yeah. If I don't answer my phone, no one's going to be concerned. It's probably, oh, okay, she's busy. I'm on do not disturb probably more than I should be, okay? So, like, but realistically, part of how at least her family could move as quick is because they knew, like, okay, this is someone who's going to do this. We know she's going to answer her phone when it's with us. We know that she's not going to miss this meeting. We know she has to be at work at this time. You know, she might be late, but she's going to show up for a meeting. And, like, I think that's something that we all can work on, is just being more, I don't say routine, that's not the right word for it, but like, for lack of a better word, having more of a routine when these things happen.
I think my lesson is kind of similar. Like, don't isolate yourself to the point where people aren't going to think twice if they don't hear from you, you know?
That's the exact what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm married, so I live with my husband. So I have a person who's like expecting me to be here.
Right. And your child.
It's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of young women listening to this podcast who live by themselves, or you know, might be really independent, and like independence is great, and I get that. I love my alone time just as much as the next person, but like, you know, if you're going on a date, let someone know. If you're going on a trip, let someone know. Like, I remember like when I was dating, I was like using the apps and everything. And if I was going out with someone, I would like take a screenshot of the profile and be like, this is the guy, this is his name, like, this is where we're going. Like, just let a friend know or let my mom know or just like whatever, just like, I don't know. I just feel like it's good to kind of put it out there. Like what you're doing, where you're going. Don't isolate yourself and like get so focused on your own life and your own stuff that like you forget to tell people what you're doing and where you're going, because it really can be the difference between like life and death.
Yes, 100%. And I want to say, we're not saying Jennifer did this. So she did all these things. And I think that, and, I think that's what helped. I mean, unfortunately, whoever took her was just so. I mean, another thought that I'm just having now is this could not have been someone's first time. And like,
Right.
was this random? If this was like a random spur of the moment thing, how could you just? I just feel like whoever the person it was, they were so quote. I don't want to use the term lucky because it's not a good thing, but like, I don't know how else to describe it. They were just everything.
Lucky though. I mean, it was a perfect storm of like people missing things, police not following up on stuff, the camera blocking their face, like everything kind of lined up so that this person could get away with it.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering, like, was this their first time, and or was this planned? Just anyway. So we're not saying that Jennifer didn't do these things. We're saying that this helped so her family could at least be on top of things the way they were, because her family. The biggest lesson, and I thought it's so sweet, because for those that don't know, I have a younger brother. It's me and my brother and my parents, and I in my head, I'm like, no, we're not that close, but no, we are pretty close when I think about it. Like her family. So stuff like this, gets to me. It always is in my head. And they really were on top of it. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways, I get out of this is how loved she was. In a documentary I was watching, some of her friends were talking about her and how they just were sad that she missed out on being an aunt to their kids and being in their wedding, stuff like that. Like, makes you want to cry. And her family just really, everyone came together. Like her brother immediately dropped what he was doing to come search, and that's beautiful. And yeah, I don't know what more to say.
The fact that she was so safety conscious makes this just that much more frustrating too.
Yes.
I feel like we all do things to protect ourselves and to keep track of what's going on around us and stuff like that. And I feel like this just says to me that like you can do everything right and something can still happen.
Yes. And I think that's why too, at least for me, just to wrap it up and not to end it on like a fear note, but because anything can happen, I think to me that makes me feel even better, because like there's sometimes, at least for me, the feeling of there's nothing more you can do is like takes a weight off my shoulder. Like there's nothing more that can be done, so that I'm not going to stress myself over it. Do the things that you should do, be safety conscious. Abby made a really great point about going on these dates with men, telling somebody. You don't have to tell your mom and your dad if you don't want to, but like tell a friend. Tell a friend in your state even. I remember one time I did that. I told when I was in New Jersey, I told one of my friends I was in North Carolina. She was like, okay, thank you for telling me, but like, is there someone in New Jersey you can tell? And
I know. Like I would tell my mom when I was living in San Diego, and she'd be like, Abby, what do you want me to do if this date goes south?
Right.
Minnesota. Like,
so try to tell someone, near you as well, but like, just let people know, like, do all these things. And it's all, and we're Christians here. This is a Christian podcast. God's sovereignty. It's all in God's hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That brings me a lot of peace too. Like, you can do all these things to protect yourself, and I mean, this might be a morbid way of looking at things, but I'm kind of like, if something happens to me, it was my day to go.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that, but yeah, essentially that's how I'm at. That's where I'm at too. Yeah. That's where I'm at too. Like if it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
That's still kind of a sad note, but hey, everybody, weight off your shoulders. God's in control.
None of our days today.
Yeah.
Manifesting that.
Right. Fingers crossed. But yeah. Okay, let's wrap it. Anything else you
Anyway,
want to add?
sorry to do like
I
that.
know. I'm like, ooh, this went darker. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that was it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys for listening. I will link the websites that they have up for her, and if you have information and all that stuff, I'll link all that in the description and in the show notes, and then I'll probably even do like a blog post on it too. And I'll also post that picture. Like, you have to see the picture of the person sitting in front of the post. It's insane. Like, that's the craziest thing about this thing to me. Like, it's insane. So I'll link all that as well. And if you enjoyed this podcast, let us know. If you have a case that you want us to talk about, let us know. If you have something like true crime adjacent you want us to talk about, we're going to be talking. I'll just go ahead and say it. We're going to be talking about the Fire Festival next. And we've talked about, for example, Elizabeth Holmes. That's like a less like true crimey, but it's still like true crime adjacent. So we've talked about Elizabeth Holmes before. So if you have anything else like that, let us know that you want us to like do some research in and talk about it and discuss. So yeah, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, and all of that. Have a good day, night, evening, however, wherever you're listening.
Bye.